儿女齐心团结，金抗美援朝，打败美帝野心狼，就是这个样。
Unaware of the massing of the Chinese troops, the US Army paused for Thanksgiving. Roast turkey and cranberry sauce were served up. MacArthur and his soldiers still thought the war would be over by Christmas.
Well, Thanksgiving Day in 1950 was a very fine day. The weather was nice. The typical Thanksgiving dinners were there. We had everything that we would have had we been at home. And it was just a very nice day. And that was the last nice day we had.
Next morning, 300,000 Chinese attacked.
They'd blow these bugles, and they had a chilling effect on the soldiers.
The first aim of the volunteers going into Korea was to defend our homes and country, the motherland. We couldn't allow others to cross the Yalu River and invade us. But also, we wanted to help the Korean people.
As in China's long civil war, Mao believed that greater motivation could defeat an enemy with superior arms.
Because our war was a just war, the enemy could be defeated. Our bravery and our strategy, developed during the years of the liberation struggle, would help defeat the enemy.
The reaction when China came in was that we had a whole new war, a whole new situation. It was a very terrifying situation, and one that was extremely troubling.
In the next swing of this seesaw war, UN forces across North Korea were thrown back, abandoning vehicles and equipment.
We had people on top of the trucks, on the running boards, just heading south. I never felt so inadequate in my life as to be part of an army that was running. It's unbelievable.
I ask you to imagine a situation where the temperature is 25 below zero. Nothing is working as well as it should. Weapons have difficulty firing in that kind of a temperature. A lot of Chinese out there.
I'm not aware of any other movement of Americans that were as futile as that rout was. And it was a rout.
American soldiers called it bug-out fever.
We are fighting in Korea for our own national security and survival. We have committed ourselves to the cause of a just and peaceful world order through the United Nations. We stand by that commitment.
At a Washington press conference, journalists repeatedly pressed Truman on the possible use of the atom bomb.
It went on and on and on, just like that. The president not being able to shut this thing off, and till people began to think that maybe we were going to use the atomic bomb. The bulletins about the president's press conference went around the world immediately, and that caused incredible alarm.
British Prime Minister Clement Attlee was sufficiently alarmed to fly to Washington for crisis talks.
My aim in these talks is to align our policies in the new and troubled situation in the world and to find the means of upholding what we both know to be right.
Next day, Truman assured Attlee that there were no plans to use atomic weapons.
I think the Americans understood it would be tit for tat. If they use it, we will use it. We had an agreement with the Chinese. That's why they didn't use the atomic bomb.
At home that winter, for many American families, the pain began with a call at the door.
The 29th of December, the doorbell rang. It was on a Friday. I had just washed my hair. And I opened the door, and there was a boy delivering a telegram. And he turned on his heels and left. And I knew the telegram was going to tell me either he was dead or alive. And when I opened it, I just thanked God that he was missing in action. As far as knowing when he became a prisoner, that wasn't for another year. Even though we knew he was in a camp, I never knew from day to day how he was doing. I never knew from letter to letter if he was alive, so I always held out hope that he would come home, but I never could say that he would come home.
Retreating UN soldiers adopted a scorched earth policy. After withdrawing from Hungnam, American engineers blew up the dockside. The Chinese, rapidly advancing, recaptured the northern capital, Pyongyang. At the beginning of 1951, Seoul fell again to the Communists. General Matthew B. Ridgway was appointed by MacArthur as the new field commander. At last, UN troops began to slow the Chinese advance.
The defeatism and the bug-out fever and so forth that had afflicted the Eighth Army before was eradicated.
From the beginning, the United States enjoyed air supremacy.
When I was flying up along the Yalu in the F-86, the Sabre, we were using tactics that literally had been used in World War I and World War II, except we're flying jets at much higher speed.
When Russian MiG-15 fighters with well-trained Russian pilots were sent to the war zone, they posed a challenge to American supremacy.
Мы имели задачу туда ехать.
Our mission was to go there to train pilots.
Для обучения.
But later we ended up as participants in the Korean War.
Оказались участниками этой Корейской войны.
The presence of Russian pilots risked bringing the Soviet Union into direct conflict with the United States.
Наше руководство, и государственное, так и военное.
Our government and the military demanded complete secrecy.
Нас обязывали, как можно.
We must never let the enemy know they were fighting Russians.
Чтоб наш противник не понял, что воюет против них русские.
When the US deployed the F-86 Sabre, they slowly won back mastery of the skies. This enabled American aircraft to keep up a constant offensive on ground targets.
For ground attack, we were flying the F-9F, the Panthers. Now, they would carry a large bomb load, and we could carry a couple of 1,000-pound bombs on that airplane, and on some flights, 100-gallon napalm tanks with a white phosphorus grenade cap on there so that when it hit the ground and impacted, it would burst into flame and ignite the napalm. And so we used all of those things from time to time on ground attack.
MacArthur now called for the bombing of Chinese cities and for the pursuit of the war in mainland China. This was too much for Truman.
I believe that we must try to limit the war to Korea for these vital reasons: to make sure that the precious lives of our fighting men are not wasted, to see that the security of our country and the free world is not needlessly jeopardized, and to prevent a third world war. A number of events have made it evident that General MacArthur did not agree with that policy. I have therefore considered it essential to relieve General MacArthur so that there would be no doubt or confusion as to the real purpose and aim of our policy.
By the summer of 1951, the two sides had fought themselves to a stalemate in the hills of Korea, almost at the point at which the fighting had begun a year earlier. Every month brought another 2,500 UN casualties.
It became evident to us that we were not going to fight this war to win.